Our final segment this morning with Clint Kelly, malpractice attorney. Good to have him on as always. Very interesting conversation this morning. I mean, I know we help people directly with their cases, but I think on a larger scale, this program, thanks to you, also helps just educate the general public. Right. A lot of people that don't call in are listening, and they need to know. You've opened my eyes about what you needed to do when you go to a hospital now. Well, questions, ask.
Remember what you said about trust earlier in the show, and again, we can trust and question, but patients now are going to have to start taking care of themselves and being proactive to make sure they're not one of these 1 in 4 people who have medical errors cause them an injury.
You hit it on the head there. It's trust in everything, be it law enforcement, be it a doctor. I treat them with respect, but I ask questions, and that's the way it's got to be. Let's go to Jean. Hi, Jean.
Hi. I just wanted to say that about 10 years ago I had a hysterectomy. I ended up catching MRSA. And, the doctors act like they couldn't do nothing for me after that. I was in the hospital for 30 days and at home on a machine for about a year. And nobody wanted to come in my room and clean me up. Then my family started sitting around the clock. My sister ended up calling the chief of staff up there because she's an RN from Indiana, and she wanted to know what was going on and got the balls rolling. So they started sitting around the clock watching what they was doing, but I was in bad shape. And MRSA is very big. I don't know how I caught it, but I know I caught it in the hospital. I was very sick at death's door.
Listen, I hear you. We should touch on that. I mean, that's an epidemic, isn't it?
Well, Jean's lucky to be alive, and she's lucky it was caught.
What did she say her procedure was? Did she say hysterectomy?
Hysterectomy.
Okay, and then she got MRSA, which is an infection.
Yeah, it's a virulent type of staph that is resistant to most antibiotics. She's lucky they caught it. We're able to treat it. The scary situations are the ones where the patient's sent home and it's not recognized, and the patient eventually succumbs to the infection and either loses a body part or dies, which I've had one of those cases in Jackson. And so, like we said before, the fact that you get an infection in the hospital isn't necessarily indicative of any type of medical or hospital negligence. What is a medical error, medical mistake, is when that infection is there to be found and diagnosed and it's not. Okay. And the patient is sent home with that infection, and then you've got a whole host of problems when that infection gets out of control.
All right, let's go to Donna. Hi, Donna.
Hi, I was calling about my mother. Last year she went to Summit Emergency Room twice, and each time they sent her home saying that thought it was anxiety. So my sister called her doctor from Centennial, and her heart doctor. They got her in there and the next day they did a quadruple bypass.
Wow.
And during that process, and they sent her to rehab from there. And the rehab kept pushing her and strong-arming her to do the exercises to get her back because Medicare wouldn't keep her but for so long. And then got her to the rehab, and the rehab was not qualified to take care of a cardiologist, a patient. And they said we had to get her back to the emergency room where she had contracted MRSA. She was so sick. So we stayed around the clock with her as well. But you're right, you have to have people around the clock, your family in there with you. You have to have your family fighting for you. Because these doctors, especially with Summit, sending her home, telling her that they didn't think, she kept telling them, I feel like I'm going to die. Went back twice in the same day, and they said, you don't look like you're going to die of me, and sent her home.
Yeah, listen, yeah.
Nick, did you know what one of the leading mistaken misdiagnoses for a female heart attack is?
What is it?
Anxiety.
Anxiety. Like stress, like you're just getting tight chest because you're upset about something?
And it doesn't matter whether you're a male doctor or a female doctor. Women who come in with signs and symptoms suggestive of a heart attack, many of them are misdiagnosed as simply having an anxiety disorder. And I'll tell you what it is. These women come in, and it's ingrained in these physicians' minds that a lot of these women simply have emotional disorders, and that's the reason why they feel the way they feel. And so they diagnose them with an anxiety disorder, give them Xanax, send them home.
What should the standard of care be, though, beyond that? If someone comes in complaining about some of these symptoms, where they just look at you, what should the standard of care be where if they don't do it, you might have a case?
Well, we know one thing for sure. If you come in with intense chest pain or shortness of breath along with chest pain, you're going to get an EKG.
Okay.
I mean, that's just
if
nowadays.
That doesn't happen, there's a problem.
If that doesn't happen, there's a serious problem. But unfortunately, particularly with women, it's just there are a lot of heart attacks that are misdiagnosed because there is a mindset out there that these women simply have emotional issues.
By the way, she mentioned MRSA as well. A lot of people have run into that. Is MRSA really actionable if someone gets it and there's a bad result, or is it to the point now where hospitals do what they can to try to address MRSA, but it is just so widespread in a lot of hospitals, it's an accepted risk when you go?
Yeah, I think it is a risk.
So it's almost like you can't sue. Well, I went in for something else. I came out with an infection with MRSA.
My experience is it's very, very hard to prove that actually getting the MRSA is the product of negligence. It's the failure to diagnose the MRSA. That's the case.
Okay, I see. Listen, just in our remaining moments, I want to remind folks again, your office, and we're going to give the contact number up there, is there in Hendersonville. But the idea is if they're sitting there thinking they've had something that's happened to them and they're still within that 1 year and it just didn't feel right, just make the darn call to your office, right?
Yeah, it's free.
It's free, and so if they don't talk to you, they'll talk to your assistant, and basically the details will be taken down, and you'll determine.
Yeah,
right?
My paralegal Pat will customarily, she's the one that does the intake, and she'll supply that to me, and I'll review it. And if I think it's a case that's worth having the client come in and see me, I will make that call. If I don't think the case is worth it, then I will let the client know, usually in writing, in fact always in writing, but sometimes I'll make a call to them telling them why and refer them to somebody else. But it costs nothing, and nothing is worse in my mind than a patient who sits and waits over a year thinking, should I or should I not? And then when they finally figure out I can't go earn a living again, or I can't take care of my spouse again, or I simply can't live with this condition anymore, and then they decide to finally pick up the phone and call me, and I have to tell them the statute's run. It's the worst feeling.
Have you taken on a case before that has been declined by another lawyer?
Oh, yeah.
And I was going to say, and one reason for that I would think is sometimes people will go to a lawyer, and there's a lot of good lawyers around town, but they don't necessarily specialize. This is all you do.
Right.
This is all you do. Now, other lawyers could try to handle malpractice cases, certainly, and I'm not saying they wouldn't do a fine job, but that is all you do. So maybe another lawyer looks at something and says, no, I don't know if we have a case here. That doesn't mean get a second opinion.
No, I'm a certified medical malpractice specialist, so this is what I do for a living, but I've had some cases come from other attorneys who didn't know what they were doing.
Or maybe they referred them to you as well, correct?
In fact, that's the main source of my business is attorneys who refer their clients to me because this is not what they do.
Okay, and if someone comes to you again and you take their case, it's almost always, I would imagine, 100% of the time contingency?
That's correct. It's always contingency.
Okay, there's no upfront payment or anything like that?
The client pays nothing unless I recover money for them.
And when a malpractice attorney does recover, what percentage of the settlement do you get?
1/3.
1/3. And some people may say, wow, well, just remember, he's spending his time on all of this. You're the one that's bringing in all of the experts. All of that is paid for by you.
Correct.
Some cases require more than others, and then so that, I hear 1/3 at first, and then you just stop and think for a moment what you're putting in. And if you go and lose, you're clean out. They don't owe you for that money.
That's correct. I'm the one that takes the risk of losing the money that's invested in the case, and I don't mind doing that. That's part of my job, and I enjoy doing what I need to do to make sure patients get their day in court.
Yeah, but it's calculated on whether you accept it based on what you have there, if you can make it work.
Right.
By the way, what percentage of them go to trial?
Nowadays, it's probably about 1/3.
About 1/3, and then the others usually you work out some type of settlement.
Correct.
Sometimes they run into you to settle.
Well, or sometimes I go to them. The bottom line is it's always beneficial to try to settle a case and get a patient the check as soon as possible. But there are also times where you can't agree on the proper dollar amount, or sometimes the hospital doctor simply doesn't want to admit that they made a mistake, and you go to trial and you have to beat them.
All right, we've done stories with him on several of his cases, and more of those to come. Clint, listen, thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for walking us through that report, and I think there's going to be more stories we can come up with next time we see you, all right?
All right.
Clint Kelly with us. Stay tuned when we come back after we say goodbye to him. I'll throw his number up again if you want to call and contact him, and a programming note about tomorrow right after this. So stay with us, everyone.